You've tuned into
Milk Your Business for All It's Worth with Jackie and Scott,
the podcast by Gen Xers for Gen Xers
who need to increase sales
while becoming a trusted, visible authority
online. Today, everyone and every product
is a commodity. You have to raise your game in this super noisy, always on and on-demand world.
Come back each week and we'll give you actionable suggestions and ideas that will help you
milk your business for all it's worth.
Hashtag stop marketing and start connecting.
Hey guys, Scott Webb here, and I'm with my esteemed colleague,
Jackie Long.
We are part of the farm, and the farm is growing, so we'll be able to, the next few weeks, keep listing out all of our support and the folks that help us help you. But this is our initial, man, it's not even initial, this is like our inaugural, first out of the chute, like that sprout, you know, when you plant the seed and you're so thankful just to see the sprout. Well, here's our Sprout podcast, and this is Milk Your Business for All It's Worth, where each and every week we're going to help you guys figure out how to bridge this digital divide that we're going to talk about in our first podcast. But really it's about doing whatever you need to do to create a successful business, one that you love to work in, one that you love to work on, and that brings you a lot of success, either both freedom and or money. So each and every week we're going to give you guys some actionable things to practice in your business. And as always, our goal is to inform you, incite you, and maybe even entertain you. So we're going to break this down really because this is our very first podcast, and for the most part, other than my Aunt Peggy, hey Aunt Peg, and maybe my dad, hey Dad, not many people are probably going to know who we are. And so we'll take just a minute to really introduce ourselves and kind of break down our stories and how we got here. And to do that, Jackie, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So I'm Jackie Long, co-founder here at the Farm Syndicate. My background is actually rather diverse. I think maybe I ended up at a place called the Farm because I'm originally from Iowa, and when I was a little youngster, I used to go play on my uncle's farms and loved it. Saw all the tremendous amount of work and reward actually that came out of that. So the farm metaphors that you throw around they're fine.
And you're still a youngster, and you're still at the farm.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So long story short, born and raised in Iowa, left at the ripe age of 19 and moved to Hawaii, and then just basically took myself from Hawaii to New York City in a wealth of different types of business relationships and companies and things of that nature. And so throughout that time, I learned a lot, and I got to do business with everyone from Fortune 500 CEOs to celebrities, even met Elton John along the way, which was pretty fun. But at the end of the day, I think what fascinated me the most was business and human connection and everything that comes into that play. So that's really how I ended up here at the farm, and happy to be here.
I love it. Iowa to Hawaii to New York to Denver.
Yeah.
So
and there's cool. and there's a lot in between.
Yeah, and a lot in between.
But we don't need to pepper the entire podcast with my traveling stories.
Well, we may not have to pepper it, but it sure adds a really good spice and flavor to what we're doing here at the farm. So I'm super happy that you're here.
Thank you.
And really excited about the future of not only what we're doing, but for our clients' sake as well, and the things that we'll be able to help them do. So really, I'll just kind of go into mine, and if you want to check out the sortie details, you can do that online. Just Google Scott Webb, the farm. But I'm here as a direct result of 20 plus years of being an entrepreneur. Actually, it's even more than that, because I honestly technically started like my first business when I was 8. And it was a restaurant inside my mom and dad's kitchen, and my mom didn't cook, so I thought it'd be cool to, cook something. But I didn't just want to cook something, I wanted to do like a restaurant. So I got like this apron and a chef's hat, and I made a menu, probably out of like a Big Chief tablet and one of those big giant pencils. But I remember doing that, and I remember having a menu and like making reservations with my parents, and I even gave them a check, like at the end of the meal. Now they had paid for everything, the house, the food, the probably Kool-Aid at the time, and yet I still gave my dad a check, and he gave me like a $5 bill, and I was like, yeah, I'm rich, right?
For sale.
And that was really it. And I went on to, as a teenager, I did the whole mow your yards and made a really interesting life for myself as, a 14-year-old. having access to a lot of cash. And I was like, man, this is great, and I always have that thing, there's more of that or more of this where that came from, right? And my dad was an entrepreneur. So he owned a business and did really well, and I learned from his work ethic, and it really just became the foundation for the farm, because helping people. And then, of course, the digital age hit. The mid-1990s, I started developing websites, and at that point, never looked back. And so I've kind of always been in this field of helping people connect online, and we just figured out that in itself can get in the way of doing really good business and doing, making impact. And for our customers, who are typically Gen Xers, I mean, we're Gen Xers, our clients are typically Gen Xers, and they're still trying to figure out how to use the technology today to access their customers and to provide what they provide. So that whole world is what culminates in the farm. And I gave the farm the name because it's really about growth. It's really about cultivating and nurturing and doing all the things that a traditional farm does to actually grow a product that you can eat or consume or give away. And so the metaphor just fits, because our clients, it's not about just producing something and just shoving crap out to the market. Our clients deliver real value to their customers. And so to cultivate that, to nurture that, to help them grow that, and to see it get to the market. But guess what? In a digital world, that's what the farm does. So that's our brief, probably dragged on a little bit, but our brief description of who we are and what we're about. Now let's get into this podcast. And let's just go right into this meaty subject, the digital divide. Probably not something that just hits you and goes, oh, I'm struggling with that. But Jackie, can you kind of give us an idea, or our audience an idea, of what the digital divide is?
Sure. So it's one of the it's one of the principles that basically makes up the foundation of the farm. And so, like Scott just mentioned, we're dealing with a lot of entrepreneurs, businesses, things of that nature, where you get to this point where all of a sudden maybe some of the things that you used to do in your business aren't working so much. Maybe the phone's not ringing so much, no one's responding to emails, all those types of things. Well, digital technology has created essentially a transformation in the marketplace, if you will. And so it has empowered consumers to a point where they control information, they control how they want you to interact with them. And if you don't acknowledge that and understand the strategy as to what it takes to do that, then it's likely they're not going to pay attention to you. Mm-hmm. So the digital divide is exactly that. It's this chasm between where you are as a brand or a business and where your customers are. If you were to actually Google the term digital divide, you're going to see it's really like the difference between people that have access to the internet and those who don't. So if you translate that into modern business, it's really the same thing. It's the difference between brands and entrepreneurs who are executing on a digital strategy that is so relatable and relevant to their clients that they've got best friends out there. They've got brand ambassadors, and it's fun for them.
And equity in the market.
And equity in the marketplace and long-term relationships, as opposed to other businesses that are struggling there and just have kind of come to a point where they're not sure how to make that jump.
Yeah.
And so that's really the digital divide in a nutshell.
Yeah. So the gap between where you are and where your customers are, and that's going to be a tweetable fact from our podcast. So really, how did this happen? I mean, we talked about what the technical term for a digital divide is, those with internet and those without. So how did the digital divide happen? What have you experienced? I mean, you're on the younger end, so I'm on that middle part of Gen X, and you're on that younger side of Gen X. What have you seen in like the advances of technology that have created this gap?
Well, kind of just like I mentioned, so at this stage of the game, technology has evolved that's empowered the consumer in such a way that they're more informed than ever. And then they expect you to relate to them in whatever way they want, to be honest with you. Before, it was you had to go to a brand and get information, and you had to basically kind of just listen to them, and that was it. And so
find a paper, find a phone book.
They controlled everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now it's not like that. I
Right.
want to look at you on my phone. I want to look at you, maybe on one of my social media channels, perhaps. I don't want you chasing me around with a bunch of ads and so on. So there's that. So there's the empowerment piece with information, and then also technology tools that allow me to decide when and how I'll interact with you as a brand. But I also think that there's another huge component to this, which is advertising has just beaten people over the heads for decades, right? Just pounding you with tons and tons and tons of information. And I think
Buy now,
human
buy
beings-
now, buy now,
Yeah,
buy now.
I think human beings over time, at least I experienced this, grow
Some immunity?
resistant. Grow resistant to that messaging because it's constant. It's a lot of sameness to the point where it doesn't stand out anymore. I mean, I liken it to the way your body responds to, for say, an antibiotic that you've been taking forever, and all of a sudden it just doesn't work anymore. It's the same concept. So now, not only do you have empowered consumers, but now they expect that if you are if they're gonna let you talk to them, then it better be good.
Sure.
And you better be yourself.
Have
and you
something
better
to
have
say.
something to say. Because if you don't, delete.
Right.
I mean, I need to get some software right now that just deletes my whole inbox within one click, because I personally, I don't even know how they got my email, but they got it somehow.
Yeah.
And I literally read about 3 emails out of hundreds.
Yeah.
Why? Because I look at all of them and it's just the same rhetoric that I've seen for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the second component of having to differentiate, having to stand out, having to have a message and just be yourself, and then also delivering that message in a context and in the right place that your customers now really demand.
Yeah. Well, and really the smartphone has just exacerbated it. I mean,
Absolutely.
It's just gone now with the phone. The market or your customer audience, however you want to identify it, just has ability to look at everything, every option within a few swipes, a few touches, a few seconds.
You know, that's actually a really good point. I mean, if you want to do some competitor research, just ask your customers.
For sure.
Totally, honestly. Because they're going to show up to whatever meeting you're going to have with them, and they're probably going to know more about the competition than you do.
Or even
for that
more
fact
about
alone.
you.
Yeah, I mean, you can just
Yeah.
Google top 10 agencies, right? Before you walk into a meeting, boom, you're going to be very well informed before you go in.
You become an instant expert.
Yeah, an instant expert.
Well, let's talk about, it's a great explanation of what the digital divide is and how it happened. But let's give our audience, coming out of a multi-billion-dollar organization that really ran up against the digital divide.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you go into business thinking, I got a great product that helps a select person in the market or a mass audience, either one, and they're going to buy from me because I'm good. I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing, so buy from me. And man, they just run into this almost like this wall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or in our case, this digital divide, right up to this edge of this canyon, and it's like they look into the abyss and they're like, holy cow, what's down there, right? But they see across the abyss or this canyon or this divide, and they see their customer. And their customer's busy. How do we know? Because they all have their heads down. If you walk into a restaurant, it's so amazing. I actually kind of love doing this now. If you go into a restaurant, you can look at a table of like 6 or 7 family members, and they're all on their phone. No one's talking, and they're all eating. And then in the background, you got like 10 TVs on the wall that are blaring, commercials and sports and all kinds of media, but nobody's paying attention to anything, right?
Do you know there's actually chiropractors now that specialize in neck pain due to people?
For people that look down at their phone.
Talk about creating your own category.
That's awesome. So we as a business, we face the same things our audience does every single
absolutely.
day. Look, we're not gonna sugarcoat anything. The reason we're doing this podcast is just maybe 1 or 2 extra people that we're trying to get in front of will listen to our podcast. And I'm not sitting here trying to sell you anything. Ultimately, this isn't done because we just feel like, hey, Jackie, let's do a podcast today.
Actually, I think it's
it's cool.
Actress,
Yeah.
It's
fun. Look, we get to own our own radio station. So how cool is that, right? But one of the things that, the digital divide makes you do Like it forces you to do these things. And one of them we call giving your product away. It's the Groupon effect. It's the, buy it now for half price, or, some kind of coupon. And we call that the doormat effect, which is, how do I stay in front of my customer just long enough to sell enough of what I sell? And then if I can keep selling enough of what I sell, I can raise my prices or offer another product and just stay in business. But I'm here to tell you, just staying in business, man, that's a rough place to be in. And it's not about, for some, it isn't about being $1 billion or a unicorn or, on the NASDAQ. I mean, it's just about running a good business, a good, solid business that makes you good money, gives you those freedoms. But what we're finding is there's companies from entrepreneurs up to billion-dollar companies. Man, it's like they're not enjoying being in business anymore. And that's that feeling. That's the digital divide. It is something that you sit there and you look at and you're like, I know I need to get across that. And I know I can, but maybe you just don't know how. And so what we're trying to do is help you guys out there listening or even watching. Don't forget, even though this isn't a podcast format, it will be a video up on our YouTube channel and our website. And, of course, you can check us out on LinkedIn. And vice versa. If you saw us on a video but you'd like to listen to this podcast, check us out on iTunes and Stitcher, as well as our blog. So, but one of the other ones is talking about, like, you used to get sales. So maybe you've had millions of dollars in sales and now things are stagnating. Talk about that, Jackie.
Well, it's kind of exactly what you said. So I think it relates to, if we were to circle back what we talked about just a little bit ago, back in the day, brands had all the power, right? So as a consumer, you're like, hey, let me know what's available to me. And you could get away with just an epic product that you bring to market, and that's just what people did. But then digital technology comes along, floods the marketplace with way too many options that are all really competing with each other very
Features
closely,
and benefits.
right?
Features and benefits.
But
Features
they're all,
and benefits.
I mean, you can dupe a lot of that now. I mean,
Yeah.
if I made a handbag right now, Korea would have it, dibs on it tomorrow. Like, it just, it is what it is. And
Right.
technology is kind of similar too, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we were to be totally honest, like, you're pretty close with your competitors
Sure.
on certain things. But then there's people that aren't, I mean, there's companies clearly like
just
Apple
suck.
and whatnot that are just amazing and they don't
Right.
deal with that. But those are far and few between.
Yeah, but still, and let me just interrupt you there. I hate throwing, because our audience aren't running billion-dollar corporations. And when we throw in, oh, you just need to be like Apple, or you just need to be like this, or you just need to be like that. Apple spends billions a year
Yeah.
on making sure they maintain top-of-mind awareness and
But Apple also has
connection.
a very simple message, and they inspire.
True.
And it doesn't matter if you're a billion-dollar brand or a $1 brand. If you start to inspire, you're going to create a tribe that will follow you,
Yep.
and you will drive behavior as a result.
Right.
So, but I get what you're saying. But back to, the sales. So really what I was getting at is back in the day, you had the authority really to just be a brand, come to market, have a great product. That would be
Word of
one
mouth.
of a few options. And then people would buy that. And now, due to all of the different options, all of the information, all these types of things, the product doesn't really stand out on its own anymore.
Right.
It's been flooded. And so the way to stand out is to be more of yourself, as we talked about. But you will see, sales kind of start to fall. It's like the one of our clients, dominated his industry for quite some time. And then, all of a sudden comes up to essentially a digital divide. And sales basically come
Stagnate.
to a halt
Yeah.
after millions of dollars in sales for years, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
Just shows you the power of really technology and disruption, really.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
and just the power of the noise.
Yeah, and then the
The
brakes
amount of
come
noise.
on and then
Yeah.
it stops. And so that's really what that feels like. And the thing about it too, just one more point on that, is it's insidious. Right? It happens slowly but surely over time, and you're kind of like, you're not really paying attention, and there's always ups and downs, because there are, let's
Yeah.
be honest, there are. And then all of a sudden it's like, it just
Stops.
It stops.
Yeah.
And then that's usually when it's gone a little too far.
Yep.
And now you need to really look at your messaging and how you're relating to people in the world in which we live.
I mean, look at it this way.
So-
It's like the air in your tire, right? If
Yeah.
you're not maintaining your business and really optimizing what your vehicle will do, you lose a little air in your tire, it's no big deal. You don't have
Yeah.
the fluids in your engine, it's no big deal. But then one day, it's just like the air's gone, your engine dries up, and it's boom, it's done.
Flat tire.
Yep. And one of the things that, and I love this part, what's one of the symptoms of the digital divide? Crickets.
Yeah.
Like literally
Crickets.
crickets. Like,
Yeah.
my inbox has 300 emails in it, but none of them are from customers.
I got spammed just like they're getting spammed right now.
And
Yeah.
then the phone, the phone calls, no one's returning,
Yeah.
and, like we sat here and we said, hey, do we need like a fancy phone system here at the farm? And we're like, I think I get like 2 phone calls a week. Everything's text, Snapchat, Instagram, LinkedIn. I have like this whole messaging thing going on in LinkedIn. And I'm like, hey, let's move over to email. And they're like, no, that's okay.
Well, it's really the same thing when you think about it. But
Right.
yeah, crickets too, you can think, if you, again, are just throwing things out there to try and make something stick, right? Oh, now I need to have an email campaign. Maybe you do. But if you're just going to throw content out there that's not contextual to your client,
Yeah,
then
it has
you're
no
going
value,
to
no
get
meaning.
crickets.
Yeah.
So when you go
They're
to
gonna delete you.
when you go look at any sort of an open rate, it will be minimal.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
look, I mean, this will be a perfect example. In fact, we'll make this like a little test case. I'm going to send this podcast to my Aunt Peg and see if she opens it.
Aunt Peg. That's very
Yeah.
farm-worthy talk
Love
right
Aunt
there,
Peg.
my Aunt
Oh.
Peg. Okay, so let's move on and talk about maybe who this is happening to. We've kind of spoken a little bit about that, but I'm actually going to let you talk about that because you do such a great job of really talking about brands, brand equity, who this is really,
Affecting.
Yeah.
Well, it came down to, look, I'm a Gen X. I'm 46 years old, and I know my job. I'm an expert in digital marketing. I'm an expert in communication. I'm an expert in design and branding. I've been building websites since the mid-'90s, and I know the platforms. I know the ins and outs. I know the internet like the back of my hand. And yet I still struggle to get my point across, to get my value out to the audience. And I was thinking, wow, is there just something I'm missing? And I realized it's generational. Because I look at my daughter who's a millennial, and I look at my friends, my younger friends, and some of the folks that I run around with who are millennials, and they just live this world. They just get it. I mean, my daughter's like downloading apps that even I haven't heard of, and I'm pretty savvy, and I'm pretty on top of it. I'm like, I've never heard of that before, and I'm like, gee, Jiminy Christmas, right? That is just literally like even kind of overwhelms me. And I'm thinking, well, what if you haven't grown up in this? What if you've just been doing business as usual? You're Gen X like me, you're in your 40s or 50s, maybe late 30s, and you own a business or you run a company, and it's just, hey, it's tactics and it's processes and it's, the amount of phone calls that we make all makes a difference. And now what we're finding is that there's that divide that, man, they walked right up to the edge, and it's like, okay, those things aren't working anymore. And so we kind of decided that the Gen X generation is the one that's really struggling.
Yeah.
And they have, this is just so baffling, is, look, I got 20 plus years of equity in digital marketing. And yet I have to kind of relearn my craft almost annually.
Oh, constantly.
And
And
so-
you will always have to do that.
And
It
so I
will
think
never
about
stop.
our customers, that come from all backgrounds. I mean, we work with custom home builders. We work with large wholesalers and retailers. We work with financial service providers. We work with coaches and authors. And they have all this great expertise and this great equity and this story, really, this story of bringing value to their customers. And it's like, I look at them, I'm like, gosh, you're so valuable. I mean, the stuff if I knew even a fraction of that, how much better my life would be.
Yeah.
And so they have, look, I'm going to throw this right under the bus right now. Unless you're the CEO of a tobacco company who goes to work every day knowing that the product you sell kills people, other than that, the other 99.9% of every business out there that actually delivers value to their customers has value. But how do they get it to the marketplace? How do they get their customer to listen to them? And that was really when we decided that's what we're going to do. We're going to go battle for my generation to become great communicators and to learn how to do this online, and even to utilize somebody like the farm to help them do that. And when we sat down and said, it is the Gen Xer, it is that, that late 30s, early 40s to 50s, that's the person that we want to help. And it's not that these people are some of the smartest people I've ever met. And it's not that they, aren't capable. It's just that, first of all, they don't know what they don't know. And number two, they have all this other value that they need to be spending the time on and their efforts and energy. And helping them do that is just really what gives, that's what makes the farm grow. And I want to just make sure that they understand that, this isn't about your product. This is about ultimately being relatable, about being relevant, and being visible. And it's rarely your product.
Yeah.
And yet, this is where I see most of our clients and most of our prospects spending all of their effort and energy, like coming up with new features and benefits all the time, renaming their product, repackaging their product, because, if no one's buying it, then we need to create a new package.
Yeah.
And yet that's not the problem. The problem is they haven't gotten their message out in a way where their customer is wanting to interact.
Yeah.
And that's who it's happening to. So let's talk about the digital divide. And we won't go into a whole lot of this because we've actually kind of summarized this a little bit. But I want to talk about a particular instance with one of our clients. And they have $160 million in sales. And they've literally walked up to the edge of the digital divide. And now they are relegated to doing small jobs, pickup work. They're having to rethink again. They're trying to rethink. Maybe if we just throw more services in, more people will buy. And that's not it at all. They're really good at what they do, and they have all this equity. Years and years of experience, and they are experts in their space, and yet no one's listening, no one's buying. And that's one of the examples that just hits me. That's why I get up every day, because I'm like, I can't wait till I say we've had $160 million in sales, but I also want to make sure that that's always escalating, that we're always helping more people. And it's not about us selling our product. It's not about us, trying to make a lot of money. It's literally about how many people can we help. Mm-hmm. And I look at this company and what they do, they're craftsmen. They're literal craftsmen in their field. And yet they aren't able to perform their art. They're not able to act on their art because it's just so noisy. And the word of mouth is gone. They have such a little digital presence, so they can't be discovered even. And that's the other thing. This isn't about necessarily your ad budget or how much money you can throw. This is about being discovered. And when you got people out on their cell phone looking for stuff, their smartphone every single day, and you can't be discovered, or you're not even discoverable, how much does that limit you and your potential? So, and the other part too is, small businesses with no marketing budget. They just don't have any money to throw at advertising or marketing or promoting their product. And you think about, the digital divide on their end, it's just like they're almost washing their hands. Well, I guess, I'm going to have to start looking for a job. And I hear that. I actually hear CEOs and owners of companies that have done so much over decades who are now literally telling me, I think I'm going to have to go get a job. And that's the last thing an entrepreneur wants. It's the last thing a business owner wants, right? Mm-hmm. Is to go find a job. They don't want to work for anybody. They work for themselves. Yet, here it is. This digital divide is keeping them on this side when they need to get on the other side to their clients. And that's it. This is the coolest part of the podcast. I love this part. Gold nugget. In fact, we'll have this really cool graphic that comes up on the video. Oh, by the way, just a reminder, if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can go out to our website, farmsyndicate.com, or go to YouTube and Google I'll Google it, but you can search Farm Syndicate and find each podcast every week in a video format. So if you want to see what we look like, or that's kind of your thing, we have a video, so that's really cool. Any rate, but the gold nugget part is literally my favorite part. And it's kind of the interactive portion of our podcast. This is where we go out and challenge our audience to go do something. So this week, or for our very first podcast, we're going to challenge you to do what, Jackie?
Well, since this is really the digital divide is really the theme for all the podcasts coming up. It's the premise. It's the idea behind, all of these things in a digital world. And so I just challenge everyone to educate themselves and be honest with yourself and take a really good look at your current situation. And like I said, be honest and see, am I feeling some of the symptoms of the digital divide that we spoke about today? So, am I giving my product away to try and stay relevant or undercutting competition? Am I not really getting the sales I used to? Am I putting in way too much time and effort and potentially money and not getting enough in return? Am I really connecting with my customers, or is my content just bouncing off their heads?
I love that
right?
part.
I don't know why I have this picture of content bouncing off people's heads. Probably because it just does. It bounces off mine. Very few gets in. So that's the gold nugget. I really challenge everyone to just be honest, take some time, journal it out, take a good look, see where some of these things might insidiously be creeping in, because that's usually how it happens. It's insidious.
Right.
And then write it down and let us know what you find out. I also encourage everyone to take advantage of the comments. They're not just there for us, but I don't know about you, but I like Yelp and Amazon reviews because why? It's people like myself dealing with similar problems. So get in the comments and create conversation with each other.
Yeah.
Have a good time, learn from each other. We'll interject and help you out as much as you can.
And we learn from your feedback too.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
We think we're, all this, good stuff because, hey, we got this podcast and, we have all this really cool fancy equipment and cameras and lighting and all that stuff. And we're like, yeah, our podcast is out. And it's like, hello? Anybody listening? So if there is anybody listening, and this is going to be our first podcast anyway, so I shout out to my Aunt Peg, and my Grandma Reinig. That'll probably be the only two that actually listen to our podcast. But hey, leave us a comment, Aunt Peg. Leave us a comment, Grandma Reinig, and, because we'll take even that feedback, right? But for the rest of you, we love feedback. It is the conversation. It is what really digital is about. It's having conversations. It's writing something. And, whether it's erroneous or you feel like you want to vent on our channel, it's still having that conversation. And that is what digital does for you today. By being able to put something out that inspires somebody to come back with some words. Or maybe you piss somebody off and they come back with something that's really negative. Either way, you're stirring something up out there and you're making that your point. I mean, this is how you become relevant. Right? You're not neutral. You're stirring something up. You're creating conversations online, and you're doing it in a way that helps you become what we've been talking about is an authority in your field, someone that stands on a platform with something not just to sell, but with something to say, something to offer, some solution that will actually help somebody else's life. And that's what we're here for, to help you guys do that. So let's tease our next podcast, number 2. What are we going to talk about?
Next week is going to be a huge part of your messaging, really getting people to care about what you do. What do you have to do to get people to care about what you do? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's where it all starts. So that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah, so good. So make sure you guys tune in to our next podcast. Jackie puts a ton of effort and resources and energy and bandwidth behind each one of our podcasts every week. So kudos to you. Couldn't do this without you. So awesome. Thank you so much. And don't forget to check us out on our website at thefarmsyndicate.com. That's where you can find all this content. But also we are prominent on LinkedIn. And we also have a YouTube channel. And, of course, just Google The Farm Syndicate. And we'd love for you to continue to give us some ideas, some feedback. What would you like us to talk about? What are you finding a problem in your market that maybe we can address on the podcast? So definitely leave some comments. Definitely give us some feedback. And other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, watching, reading this version of our Milk Your Business for All It's Worth podcast. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. See you guys. Bye-bye. Done.
Done.
And done.
Done and done.
Okay.